What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. It's Jeff Guy here. In today's video, we're doing a DFS breakdown for Thompson versus Holland, which is going to be a great fight night card. There's like 6 or 7 top 10 ranked fighters going off in this one, so I'm very excited for this slate. Make sure you subscribe, comment, like, do those things. Let me know you enjoy this content, and let me know if you're going to be watching this, how you're going to be watching it, and who you're rooting for. That being said, let's get into the DFS slate. All right, so we are down to a 14 fight slate, which is still pretty big for a fight night. We typically see between 12 and 15, so 14 is pretty normal. Let's go over some of these picks. The first fight, I can't even pronounce this girl's last name, but she is a really strong fighter. They're both kickboxers. Yasmin Yaguari against Estela Nunez, who I really like as a prospect. Yaguari is a pretty big favorite in this fight, and it makes sense why she is not only the favorite, but coming in at 9,300, which is like the third or fourth most expensive player on the slate. She's a really good striker, strong on her feet, and has rare knockout power in the women's strawweight division. Both of these girls are great, and I could see them both being ranked at some point. Taking a look at the stats for this fight, though, this is what we care about for DFS. They're pretty similar in terms of striking significant strikes, strikes absorbed, and defense. So there's not a huge edge for either girl. And then in the grappling, I don't anticipate either one taking this to the ground, as they are both kickboxers. If I had to choose one to dominate on the ground or do better, I would take Yasmin. But I don't really see this one as a very favorable DFS environment. This should be like a low volume, or at least lower volume than we expect, kickboxing match, which doesn't really lend itself well to DFS, where we care most about takedowns and knockdowns. So I don't see, we saw 65 points from Yasmin in her last win. And then if you look at Estela, 2 losses, 36 points. I just don't see a ton of value here, so we're going to look elsewhere on this slate. Next up, we have Marcelo Rojo versus Francis Marshall. Francis Marshall will be making his UFC debut in this fight, and he is opening up as a 165 favorite to Marcelo Rojo's plus 140 underdog. He does have a 1-inch height advantage, 1-inch reach advantage, and a couple inches on the legs, although that isn't that big of a deal, given that Francis Marshall is a really strong wrestler. If you take a look at his grappling, he's averaging 6 takedowns per fight, which is inflated because he had so many in his first Contender Series match, but he is a very strong wrestler. Going up against Rojo, he should do well. This is a guy who's over the hill, is a strong fighter, but at the same time isn't on the level of Marshall. Marshall should control this one, and projects as a really great DFS play at only 8,800. So you should be able to fit him in your lineups, pay up for some studs, and then find value elsewhere if you wind up playing him. Next up, we got Natan Levy versus Genaro Valdez. Genaro Valdez is an interesting prospect. Well, he's not a prospect. He's an older guy at this point. He has lost his last 2, I believe, coming in without really significant reach or height advantages, although he does have 1 inch on reach. He's a plus 170 dog to Natan Levy, and I kind of liked Valdez coming into this fight. He's a more voluminous striker, despite being a less accurate striker and having worse defense. And also, then we get into the things why we don't like him, right? 12.91 strikes absorbed per minute might be the highest I've seen in a long time. And while we're talking about the striking, I'm anticipating this fight, happening on the ground. We take a look at the takedown average for both of these guys. They both they're going for the takedowns and they try to get them. I think Natan Levy personally is the stronger wrestler. So I'm going to back him in this fight, given the fact that he should get a lot of takedowns. Gerard Valdez clearly can be taken down, as he has 0% takedown defense, and we'll see if he can keep him on the ground. If Natan maintains dominant position, gets a lot of takedowns, he could be a nice DFS play at 8,900. If we take a look at him here, his last win, he got 120 points basically off 9 takedowns. That's at 45 of his points came right there. That kind of plays the picture of someone who can't keep his opponent on the ground. So we'll see if he can keep Genaro on the ground. It's probably a bad thing, even though he earns control time. He doesn't really get up to 9 takedowns. So decent play, but I think there are better options. All right, our first lock on the card is Darren Elkins versus Jonathan Pierce. Well, Darren Elkins is not the lock. He's actually not going to win. We're taking Jonathan Pierce in this matchup. He's just a much better wrestler and a much better striker. As we take a look here, averaging almost over 2 more strikes per minute, much more accurate striker, comparable defense there, so I'm not going to worry too much. And then on the wrestling, the stats just don't add up at all. Jonathan Pierce averaging 6.75 takedowns per 15 minutes. If you take a look, 6 times 7, that's 35 point. 6 times 5 is 35. Oh my God, I'm horrible at math. Jeez. 6 times 5 is 30 points. If you get to 7, it's 35. He could have a very nice floor as a takedown artist in this fight. Going over to the pricing, he is one of the more expensive guys on this slate at 9,500. He needs to get a lot of those takedowns to pay off. But if you take a look, 4, 6, 6, 5, that's a really, really safe floor. And in his past 4 fights, 4 of them have gone over 100 points, which is exactly what you need. And really, he has the upside to go 120s, 140s. All we're looking for in DFS. Next fight is the statesman Michael Johnson versus Mark DeKazi. Michael Johnson has fought some really, really tough guys, man. He has gone through the ringer and is like nearing the end of his career. He's plus 260 on the line to DeKazi's minus 315. I'm backing Mark just because I think Johnson is over the hill. We're going to talk about it again. He's by no means out of this fight, and this price probably doesn't reflect how much of a chance he has to win. But at the same time, DeKazi has kind of been a renaissance of talent. He's drastically better in takedowns and should earn a couple even though he's a striker, he's also becoming a wrestler. And does give up some statistical advantages to Johnson, but I'm not going to weigh too heavily in on the stats for this one, just knowing how strong DeKazi has been recently. Take a look at him on DFS. The last 2 wins have both been decisions and have gone over 110 points, which is ideal, especially at 9,200. That's really what you need. And so if he can get, the 19 total takedowns on Michael Johnson, or at least 19 average 10, right? He can easily pay off his salary. And if he can finish Michael Johnson, which definitely isn't out of the question, he could be in for a great DFS day. Clay Guida versus Scott Holtzman. I guess we'll watch this fight. I don't want to play either guy in DFS. We're going to make this one pretty quick. They're both pretty old at this point. I anticipate this being a low volume decision win with not a ton of takedowns. It's possible that they get some, but both guys are projected played in the middle of the slate here, 76 and 8,600. I really just don't think that either guy should be in your lineup. It's possible that one of them pays off. It's MMA, anything can happen, but yeah. Our next women's matchup of the card comes against 2 top 15 contenders in Angela Hill and Emily Ducote in the women's strawweight division. Taking a look, Angela Hill has advantages in height, in reach, and in leg reach, but I'm taking Emily Ducote to win this one by decision. Angela Hill is kind of like the Neil Magny of the women's strawweight division. She's at the barometer for, are you good? Can you actually compete in this division? Can you be top 15? And I think Emily Ducote can. She has serious edges in strikes landed per minute, 7.73. Pretty good defense and absorbs fewer strikes. Angela Hill, of course, can win any fight she's in. She's proven that time and time again. But I'm taking her in this one. Should be on the ground, or should stay off the ground, should stay on the feet, as Angela Hill she's only gotten a couple takedowns in her career, and Emily Ducote has not been taken down. So Emily Ducote is the favorite at minus 120 and heavy favorite to win by decision. Same odds to win by KO and sub means the sportsbook does not believe that that's going to happen. Taking a look at her price on DFS, we don't love her, but I don't hate her either. If you want to play Emily Ducote, I think that's fine. In her last decision win, 116 strikes, 77 points. That's not amazing, but if she can wind up finishing Angela Hill, which isn't out of the question, not what I'm projecting, she could be fine. Again, better plays on the board. Getting close to the main card here as we go to Nico Price coming off a 1-year layoff and Phil Rowe, who missed weight this morning. But Phil Rowe is a 3 inch taller. He's got 4 inches in reach and 2 inches in leg reach. So Phil Rowe is definitely an interesting underdog here as he's plus 115. Definitely in line to win, but given that he might have had a difficult weight cut, he might not be ready to go for this one. Nico Price coming off an injury and has been a knockout artist, according to the UFC page here. 67% of his wins coming by knockout. Taking a look at strikes, Nico Price has the slight edge, but I don't think that this is a huge disadvantage, especially given Phil Rowe's size advantage. It's going to be tough for Nico to land. If we take a look at takedowns, this fight should probably be fought on the feet. So I'm anticipating that Phil Rowe actually gets an underdog win here. If we take a look at their salaries, Nico Price is 8,400 as the favorite and has gone over 100 points like twice since 2019. Only one win since then as well. So you got to give him a little bit of credit, and also the fact that he's coming off an injury. We got to be careful there. And that's Alex Oliveira, not Charles. Just want to be very clear about that. And Phil Rowe, we're definitely interested in. He has knockout upside, and he has also knockdown upside, which is more valuable than a takedown just in terms of total points. So if he can get to that 100, you don't even need 100 points out of him. If you get to 80 or 90 at 7,800, he is more than fine. So I love Phil Rowe, and I'm probably going to be playing him in single entry contests and potentially in cash. I have not decided yet. All right, on to the main card. We've got Eric Anders versus Kyle Daukaus. Admittedly, I'm on Kyle Daukaus, but don't feel great about it. I don't think he's amazing for DFS, even though the Darsh Knight is his nickname, has definite potential for takedowns. He's gotten 3 in a fight, putting up 118 in his submission win against Jamie Pickett. Granted, that was a first-round sub. I don't know if that's going to happen against Eric Anders, who's just like the stronger fighter in this matchup. I really have a tough time believing that it's going to be a total domination by Kyle Daukaus, but I do think he wins just given some control time. And if he can get him to the ground, it's like, I mean, Eric Anders is a striker, so it could be kind of tough. In terms of defense, Eric's got a better striking defense, but less takedown defense, right? So like that's what we're going to lean on when we're making this pick. We're going to take Kyle Daukaus by decision, I think. I don't think that Eric Anders is a bad play in DFS, though. If he winds up getting the win, it's at 7,100. He is relatively cheap compared to everyone else, especially Daukaus. And in his last loss, where didn't get subbed in the first round, put up 52 points at 7,100. Like, that is fine for cash. That is fine. Like, you take your savings, you take your loss, high volume loss, and you're good. Got 3 takedowns. You take that. Again, like another fighter who hasn't gone over 100 since 2019. So we just got to be tempering expectations if you're playing him, right? Like, you're expecting him to lose, but hoping he's a high volume option, gets a takedown or 2, maybe a reversal, and manages to get you 50 plus points. Like, that's kind of where he is. I'm probably not going to play Daukaus because I'm expecting the decision win, and that's just not going to pay off at that 100 point upside. Second fight of the main card is a late replacement, Jack Hermanson, number 8 in the division, against Roman Dolidze, who just came in after beating, I believe it was Phil Hawes, like tore up his knee or something. Comes in with a 1-inch height advantage, despite giving up 1.5 inches in reach and 5 inches in leg reach, which is interesting. But Roman Dolidze is a dog. I really like him. I think he's probably on his way up to the top of the division. And Jack, like, I'm really not all that impressed in. I know he's a minus 195 favorite coming into this fight, but I think Dolidze wins this one straight up and wins it pretty handedly. We saw him not like 2 or 3 weeks ago fight Phil Hawes and was just dominant. Did manage to rip his knee out of its socket. And he's only 7,500. Which means even if he winds up losing, it's probably by decision. His only loss since 2020 was by decision. And despite only getting 39 points, I think he's able to take Jack down, probably get a couple of those takedowns that we really like. In his last decision win, if he winds up winning by decision, he put up 86 points with 5 takedowns, so that's solid there. And then, of course, as we look at these last 2 matchups with Daukaus and Hawes, guys we talked about already tonight, 109, 115 points, definitely that upside. If he pulls off a win, it could be very beneficial. I'm all over Dolidze today. Coming up to what's probably the people's main event, we've got Tai Tuivasa against Sergey Pavlovich, and if you're playing either of these guys in DFS, it means you believe that the other guy's getting knocked out, which is probably likely, but I believe that it's less likely than people think. Both these guys have chins of iron and can really, really take damage. So if you're betting on this fight, you're hoping for 1 or 2 knockdowns and a finish. Tuivasa plus 215 to win by knockout. I think that's a really solid betting option if you're going to be betting on Tuivasa at all. And then it looks like Pavlovich is going to knock out Tuivasa, which we know is a very, very hard thing to do. Only Cyril Gane has done it recently. So I'm not going to hold out hope for either of these guys in DFS, especially in cash, where one of the guys might score 0 points. But if you want to play them in tournaments, I think it's more than fair. There's a really good chance they end up in the optimal. As you can see, Pavlovich's last 4 fights have all ended in round 1 wins, with him scoring 100 points. And then you take a look at this fight in 2018 where he scored 7. So he's either the worst play on the slate or the best play on the slate, especially if this fight ends in round 1. And then you take a look at Tuivasa, it's going to tell you the same story, right? 99, 100 point upside, especially at 7,200, is really, really strong. But he scored 22 points in his loss against Gane, which is just not going to get it done. So play these guys at your own risk. I'm personally on Tuivasa because Bam Bam, Shui, all that stuff. But good luck. All right, then we got our top 3 fights on the card. We've got Matthias Nicolau versus Matt Schnell. Matt Schnell looked terrible on the scales this morning. He actually had to cut his hair off just to make weight and looked terrible on the scales. He was already a plus 260 underdog. He swelled to 300 here and minus 365 for Matthias Nicolau. He's going to win. I think he's as close to a lock as you can get on this card in terms of betting. In terms of DFS, I don't know about this one. Only averaging a takedown or 2 per fight, and with only 4 strikes landed per minute. Nicolau might not pay off this 9,400 price tag. So take a look. 2 fights since 2015, over 100 points. And his last 3 wins have all been under 80 at 9,400. That's just not gonna be enough for us. So unless he gets a submission or a TKO win, which might not happen against Schnell because he's not necessarily good, but he's so tough to knock out that I find it tough. He's one of the easiest guys to fade for me at that 9,400 price range. Now, if you guys didn't know, I write for DraftKings Nation and put out an article kind of like this for every single fight night, basically just talking through some of the strategies, some of the picks that I'm going to be doing. I did write up Matthias Nicolau as a cash option, called out that I don't love him for tournaments. The guy that I kind of want to talk about with you guys here in relation to this article, which I'll link in the description, is Bryan Barberena. I bring up that I also watch a lot of WWE, and Logan Paul recently had a match with Roman Reigns where his entire tagline was, "All I need is one lucky shot to take down the champ," right? And Bryan Barberena is a kind of guy who can do exactly that. He is a plus 430 underdog against Rafael Dos Anjos for a very good reason. Rafael Dos Anjos is a way better fighter. He's going to take this fight to the ground. He's probably going to attempt a couple subs. And Bryan Barberena can get taken down and is not a great grappler. He does have 55% takedown defense, but that's not going to be enough against Dos Anjos, just given his experience and his strength. I am not sleeping on Bryan Barberena in this one at all. 6.11 strikes landed per minute, 5 absorbed, which isn't great, but Dos Anjos isn't a high volume striker himself. So if he winds up getting the win, which he looked really good in his fight against Robbie Lawler, similar zombie blood to Matt Schnell, he could be the play of the slate. I would either bet, if I were betting on this fight, I would do Dos Anjos by decision, or I would take Barberena by knockout. I think we have odds on those right here. Barberena by knockout is plus 1,100. I think that's just a little sprinkle there. And then by decisions, 135 is your very safe play. So do with that what you will. Dos Anjos probably one of the safer plays on the slate because he's probably going to win. But if he doesn't and Barberena actually wins, it's probably by first round knockout, and it's going to make him, as the cheapest player on the slate, the best play on the slate. And our main event, Stephen Thompson, Wonderboy, versus Kevin Holland. And I don't have a strong feeling about this fight. I love both of these guys. They've both had really, really tough matchups stylistically recently. If we take a look at Stephen Thompson, his last couple fights have been to Bilal Muhammad and Gilbert Burns. Both have really strong wrestling. Burns with that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Muhammad is part of this Khabib group that has taken over. They're both really good fighters, and surprisingly, he's got 16 points in his last couple fights. I think that this fight personally goes to a decision, and I'm leaning towards Kevin Holland, just that he's in the theme of picking the younger fighter, the more athletic guy. I think that he is definitely in play here. It's really hard to look at this loss against Chimaev and say, oh, I'm going to recommend him at all. But Chimaev is just a different animal than both of these guys. Just different stylistically and kind of built different too. So I'm willing to bet on Kevin Holland in a fight that I think that goes the distance. We take a look at the strikes. They're very, very similar, 3.9, 3.85. Strikes absorbed, they're both in that mid-twos range, 55 to 56% defense. And both of these guys are kind of kickboxers, so I don't anticipate this one going to the ground at all. If I had to pick someone to get takedown upside, it would be Kevin Holland, but Stephen Thompson is a dog as well. I'm very much looking forward to this fight. Let me know who you think is going to win down below, and let me know who you think are the best plays on DFS. Is there someone that I like that you don't, or is there someone that I don't like that you do? Let me know. I mean, I love a lot of these guys, and we'll see how these fights go. I'll see you guys in the next one.